First of all, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Pablo Rocha. I'm the CTO for Salvo Group and also for Exit 7. I don't know if you guys heard last week, our company Exit 7, we had a joint venture, let's say, with Hispanic Media Group, who created Hispanicize, and we're working together. So we've put together our celebrities with their influencers to form a bigger network. Exit 7, basically, we represent celebrities to help them monetize their social presence. So we have Hispanic celebrities like Maria Celeste, Chiqui Delgado, Ximena Duque, which was there yesterday. We represent the celebs, and then we have also a publishing division where we have domains like latinamoms.com, Hispanic Kitchen, Popful, which is like our viral video website. So what we're going to talk about today is very important to us because it's my job to really communicate all these analytics that we're capturing. As we're publishing, as we're driving traffic to these sites that we control, it's very important for us to be accountable of everything that's happening, what traffic's being driven, where it's coming from, what do the metrics mean, and together with our content director, I'm able to use that information to give him information and say, look, this is working, this is not working, this is why this content's actually doing really well for these reasons. And hopefully today I can help you guys to start to understand a little bit about how we capture those metrics and what they mean and how that could help you guys as you're doing some similar things. First and foremost, the agenda for today is we're going to talk about what is Google Analytics, really quickly about how to set it up, and then we're going to spend most of our time going into sort of a deep dive into the reports and the data and the analytics. So what is it? It's free. That's one of the few things that's still free. But it's analytics that allow you to track any website, any blog, anything that you have that you can track traffic, page views, sessions, and things like that we're going to talk about now. It gives you insight, right? It tells you what your visitors are doing, how they're doing it, how long they're doing it for. And you're able to see also demographic data. For the most part, it's very accurate, and we'll look at how that works. Setting it up, it's actually really simple. You just have to go to Google Analytics. You have to have a Google or Gmail account. You set up the account, you just log in, put in your information, the name of your website, the domain, so on and so forth. And I think the hardest thing is that it gives you a piece of code. So it's just a little block of code that you need to put on your site. So if you have a blog and you're using WordPress or anything like that, there's plenty of plugins that allow you to put that code into your blog. If you don't, or if you don't have a developer or somebody helping you with your site, all you really need to do is you need to get that into the header of the site. So basically it needs to appear on every page of the site. If you don't know how to do that and you have some questions, come see me afterwards. I can give you some tips on how to do that. But at the end of the day, most everybody's using WordPress nowadays, so it's very likely that you can just install a Google Analytics plugin and paste this code in. The next thing that I always tell people to do, and this is actually one that we always tend to forget, or people tend to forget, is you can remove your own IP address. So what that means is wherever you are, your office, your home, wherever your location is, you can go to this website called whatismyip.com. It tells you what your IP address is at that location. And then I'm going to show you how you can go into analytics and filter that out. Why is that? You don't really want to count your own visits to the site. I mean, at the end of the day, you probably don't visit your site as often, but it's better to not have that affect your own analytics. So that will filter out your traffic, or any traffic that you want for that matter. If you have multiple offices or multiple locations, we can go and set up that filter to filter out that traffic. And last and foremost, you got to give it some time. So at the end of the day, analytics is only good over time. Even though we're going to look today and we're going to see that there are some real-time analytics that you can look at as we're standing right now, what's happening, the reality is the most powerful information is going to come over a time frame, a week, 2 weeks, a month, last week, so on and so forth. So we'll look at that too. I'm going to go through a few slides, but I really want to get into the analytics and show you hands-on. So I'm just going to get over a few topics real quick, just so that as I'm talking, it kind of makes sense. But at the end of the day, I think it's better to see it. So I'm going to spend a lot more time in analytics than on slides. Okay, so at the very highest level, all the data that's being collected is separated into these topics. The first and foremost is audience. So audience is everything you want to know about your visitors. It gives you a bunch of reports and a bunch of data about people visiting your site. Then there's acquisition. Acquisition tells you everything you want to know about the visitors, or I'm sorry, what drove those visitors to your site. So how did they get there? Where did they come from? That kind of information. Behavior is more about your content. So with behavior, we'll be able to see reports about which content's doing best, which pages are being viewed the most, specifically about the site. With conversions, this is an area, it's an advanced topic. We won't get into conversions a lot, although the slides or the introduction of this session did talk about goals, so I will touch on it a little bit. But at the end of the day, this is more to be able to set up a funnel where you can track specific actions on your site. So for example, if you have a registration page or if you have a contest or something and you want to be able to track a user on your site going from the home to a landing page to the registration to the thank you. So it creates like a funnel and you literally can set up a goal that says, what I want to track is people getting to that thank you page and I want to see every step along the way. So I can see how many people went to the landing page, how many people got to the registration page, and then how many fell off. So people got there, but they didn't register. It gives you information about maybe there's a problem with the registration, maybe there's too many fields. At least it gives you some information about where there's a flaw or where it's working really well. I mean, it's not always negative. We're going to look at real time. There is some data that is real time. And what I mean by real time is analytics, Google doesn't give you, for the most part, your data right away. There's usually about a 24-hour lag on your data. So what that means is that when you're looking at it, if you look at today's stats, they're more likely earlier in the morning or late last night, actually, depending on the time zone. They're not really right now. So that's why I was saying it's best to always go back in time, look at previous weeks. But they do offer a real time, and it's kind of interesting because it gets a little addictive because it's like the stock market, and we have it in the office. You can real time see how many people are on your site, what page they're looking at, how did they get there, what city or what country they're in. So it gets pretty interesting, and if you have a lot of traffic on the site, you could sit there and watch it for a long time, and it becomes really cool to see what's happening. And that is actual real-time information. The difference is that it only displays it, you can't report off of it. You'll be able to report off of it next day or the day after. And then finally, customization. I am gonna try to spend a little bit of time here. I would love to show you how to be able to create your own report and then how to create a dashboard. The dashboard is cool because what we've done, and I'll show you one of the dashboards we use, we've incorporated some of this real-time data, and we literally have TVs up in the office with these dashboards up all day long. So we could just look and go, oh my God, there's 1,000 people on Latina Moms right now, and so on and so forth, and it makes it, pretty exciting. Okay, so before I move on to actually getting in, the other thing I wanted to cover here was some of the data, and this is the foundation. Everything that we're gonna see today really comes off of these metrics. These are the most important ones. And there's a few things that we need to know about them. Sessions. So sessions is anytime anybody actively does anything on your site, so when they visit your site. The trick with sessions is that they only last 30 seconds. Well, they could last more than 30 seconds, but if somebody goes to your site and doesn't touch anything for 30 seconds, the session expires. So essentially these sessions are important because you want to know how much the time that people are spending on your site, but it's very likely that if somebody's gone to your site, left and came back, they're going to get a new session. So what that means is that you might have one user with multiple sessions throughout one day, right? So then users basically used to be unique. It was very popular or very common to say, these are the unique users on the site. And it's still for the most part true. But the reality is that in today's world, we have mobile phones, we have tablets, we have desktops, we have laptops. And the problem is that I really don't know that you are the same person that was on that phone that was on that desktop. So even though users is still unique, the honesty is that it could be the same person. It could be the same person at home, and then at work, and then on their phone. But for argument's sake, and for the rest of this conversation, we're gonna treat it as unique users. Page views, that's pretty straightforward. How many times they've seen a page, a piece of content on your site. Average pages per session, this is important too because we wanna know they're visiting my site. How many pages are they seeing every time they go? So are they going there and seeing 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages, hopefully way more than that. So that's going to give us a good idea of how engaged they are with my site. Average session duration, we want to know on average how long they're staying on the site. And remember, the key there was a session may time out after 30 seconds. So if they come, they get distracted, they're looking at email, they haven't touched the site for a little bit, and then they come back, that's treated as a new session. Even if they haven't closed their browser and they were just sitting there the whole time. So we're going to take some of those metrics for what it's worth, and we're not going to put too much on it because obviously it could be the same person. Bounce rate, this is important. It tends to tell you how effective your content is, but if you're doing like us and you're posting in social media or posting in different places and driving traffic to your site, usually they're going to land in a URL, whatever URL you promoted. If the user only lands there and then closes the browser and leaves, that's called a bounce. What that means is they came to your site, they only saw 1 page, and they left. That may not be a bad thing, but typically and historically, you wouldn't want that. You would want them to hopefully click in the menu, click on something else, click on the sidebar, something, and see more content. The reality is that us at Exit 7, we've realized that that's really not as important to us as it is to other people, and this is the reason why. We post on social media. So for the reality is that the users, they're on their phones. 80% of our traffic, 90% more than that, is on mobile traffic. So what do you do when you're on Facebook? I mean, we all do it. You see an article, you click on it, you read the article, and you might look at the pictures or whatever, and then you close and you go on to your next Facebook article, right? And then we want to see that remain steady while increasing the number of returning visitors, right? So we want people coming back, but also seeing a lot while they're there. And then finally, I said here the one you don't want to see go up is bounce rate. I mean, yes, technically you don't want to see that increasing too much, but like I said, for our industry and for what we do, it's not really such a bad thing. Okay, before I get into traffic sources, let's just go ahead and let's look at analytics. And what I've done here is, some of my partners are here and they're probably going to wonder why I'm showing them real data, but it is what it is. So this is the metrics for one of our sites, Latina Moms, latinamoms.com. Just yesterday at the DMIS Summit, Chiqui Delgado, Ximena Duque, Maria Celeste, they're partners of this site, and they were announcing and communicating this site. So it's kind of cool. We're going to show you some data from that actual site. And really briefly, it's kind of intimidating. I know you look at it at first and there's a lot going on, but if you really break it down, there's only a few things you have to worry about. On the left-hand side, here's the stuff that I was telling you about before, the different types of reports, right? Real-time, audience, acquisition, behavior, conversions. So at a very high level, that's where that is, right? So we said audience, that's the information about my visitors. Acquisition, where they're coming from. So we're gonna go into those each right now. What I'm showing you on the right-hand side here is I'm already in audience, right? I've clicked on audience, and the first thing that we see for audience is an overview of the site. On the top right-hand corner, you're gonna see a date range. So what I've done here is I've selected the last 7 days. You can select any type of a date range. Like I said before, analytics work best over time. So you wanna put a date range that is at least a few days to a week to more. So you can select a start date and end date, or you can select last week, last month. And then the most important thing that you see from that point forward is these pieces of information that we were talking about, right? So you have sessions, we have users. So here we have 23,478 sessions. Of those sessions were generated by 21,000 users, right? 21,857. And those users created or consumed 44,000 pages. What that means is that on average, my users are looking at 1.89 pages per session. Not too bad, almost 2 pages every time they visit the site. What that means is more often than not, they're clicking on another page. Average session duration, 59 seconds. Not great, not really long, but that's another one of those metrics that I'm gonna say, don't worry about it too much. The reality is that because of the nature of cell phones, mobile, tablet, some of that data isn't 100% accurate. It's fairly accurate. The other thing about session duration is that it only counts the time from one page to the next. So remember we were talking about bounce rate means they left. If they leave, that time that they spent on that page doesn't get counted at all. So they come to your site, they look at one page, they were there for an hour, and they left. Unfortunately, that data doesn't get added into the average session duration. They had to have visited a second page. For whatever reason, the way that Google did it is they only count time between pages as your sessions, your duration. So that's why I always say, it's an important metric, it works, it has some value, don't stress about it too much. Same idea with bounce rate. Look, we have a pretty high bounce rate. You would want your bounce rate to be under 50% for the most part, but we're at 71%, we've seen 80%. Not something to worry about too much because, like I said, the nature of social media. Then towards the bottom, there's some additional information, right? We have language, and we can see when you click on the left, it shows you the data on the right. So I clicked on language, I'm seeing EN US, so US English, US Spanish, the second one, and I'm not even sure what XL is at the end there, but there's another Spanish language there. This gives you the top 10, and if you want more information, on the bottom right, it says view full report. That'll show you the rest of the data. So here it's just a quick snapshot of 10, right? And then likewise, you could see country. Having trouble clicking here. So we can see where they're coming from: United States, Dominican Republic, Mexico, Spain. We can see the city. And so where does this come from? And I always try to say this is fairly accurate information, but at the end of the day, when you connect to the internet, whether it's on your mobile phone or here, you're connecting by Wi-Fi, everything you're doing is being routed through an internet service provider. The reality is anything that you do here today is all being attributed to this area or wherever the internet server, Comcast or whoever is that's here. So basically, if you're connected to the Wi-Fi here, we're all going to show up as the same city, as the same person, as the same information. The demographic and stuff like that, Google tends to get that from your browser. A lot of times that has to do with your browsing habits, things that you're doing while you're on your phone. They gather that information. It's not that somebody registered somewhere as having been from one of these countries or from this information is coming from the browser. So it's pretty accurate, but the more granular you try to get, like here in city, and that's why I jumped into that, it's a little less accurate because it may not necessarily be where you really are, it's where your internet service provider is. And then I'm not going to go into all of these, but browser, we can see with different browsers. Lo and behold, we have a lot of Android users, Latin America. Operating systems, Android again. Service providers, so here, this is where we're seeing, the Comcast and how they're connecting. Operating system, this is specifically for mobile now, so I can see on mobile, Android is king again. Service provider, and another one that's important to us, screen resolution. So we want to know what size screen are most people looking at my site on. So this already tells me the top 10, 360 by 640. That's a mobile phone. That's a smaller device. So when you're writing your content, when you're creating your content, or you're creating your whatever it is you're producing, you take that into consideration. You go, wow, what is it? 41% of the people on my site are looking at it in 360 by 640. So it's a very small factor. I need to take that into consideration. Active users, I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but everything under audience here has to do with my users, right? Or the traffic coming to my site. They even have a user explorer, which we don't use very much, but you can actually get down to the level of a specific device ID so that Google's tracking, and that's how they try to say unique users. Every time you connect, it tracks, it's almost like a stamp that it puts, and it says, okay, you're this person with this number. The next time you come back, it tries to see if you're still on that same device. As long as you are, you're treated as the same user. So that's why I was saying that if you're on different devices, you're not going to be treated as the same user, right? So unique users is accurate, but not as accurate. Then from this point forward, you can deep dive into everything. We can look at more information about demographics. So we can look at specifically demographic data, age data. We can look at, What is my 35 to 44 is our largest, or at least for this time frame. Remember, I'm looking at the last 7 days. So it tells me, look at that. I have 4,900 sessions from people 35 to 44, and actually almost as much for 25 to 34. So a very interesting there that we have some millennials, but then a little bit older, maybe just past the millennial age. We can see our site gets visited more by females than males. Would make sense. Interests. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. This is something that you can kind of take as homework to look at over more time. But this is Google, remember. So Google knows everything. They're indexing everything. They know everything you're doing. They see everything that you're doing on the internet. So kind of like there was that commercial one time about TiVo that, based on what the husband or the kids were looking at, the TiVo thought the husband liked cartoons or something. So it's kind of a similar idea, right? As you're doing your everyday browsing on the internet, Google's starting to cookie you, and they're, Big Brother's kind of watching, they know what you do, and they start to develop sort of a profile of who you are and what you're interested in, what categories of content you tend to consume. And what it does is it uses that information to allow people like us that are tracking our site to know a little bit about the people visiting our site. So we can see here that, some of this information is really interesting, like 5.2% of the people on our site are news junkies, entertainment and celebrity news junkies. All right, that makes sense. Our site is Latina Moms, it's backed by celebrities. It would make sense that would be the case. Number 2, there's movie lovers, beauty mavens, music lovers. So it makes sense, right? It kind of fits with the topic of the site and very likely with the topics that we're producing. So something good to look at. You can spend quite a bit of time looking at that and sort of coming up with some conclusions. This just breaks it down into details, so you can look for those affinity categories. You can see all those parameters that we were talking about before, sessions, users, bounce rate. So now we can get even more granular and go, wow, those movie lovers, they're spending more time on my site than, let's say, somebody else in another affinity category. Maybe I should write more content for that. So it gives you yet another piece of information to sort of figure out if you want to keep driving your site that way or not. Geo gives us language and location. Again, this is the same information we saw before, but broken down into all the detail. Behavior gives us things like new versus returning. This is always good to know. Am I attracting a lot of new people? Am I getting a lot of returning visitors? You want that balance. You want a lot of new people, but you also want to have return visitors, right? So you want to strike that balance. And then frequency, this is another one of those, I love data, I'm kind of a data nerd, so some of this information gets really boring to some people, but some of it's very valuable. You want to know sometimes, how many people are coming to my site only once? 15,000. How many are coming, 9 to 14 times? So you get to break it down at that granular level and say, how many people are visiting my site a lot and why? Just really, really powerful stuff. Under technology, we're going to get the browser that we just saw, the OS. Again, what I'm doing here is it's all the information we saw in the overview, but now broken down, right? So I can now see all these additional pieces of information specifically. So before it showed me Android was 1, now it's telling me why, because of these sessions or these users or the bounce rate. So we can start comparing. Are people on, let's say, Safari visiting more pages? If you look at the third row, it's Chrome. They're seeing 2.1 pages. Or better yet, look at number 5, Android browser, 2.45. So for whatever reason, that device is or permitting people to see more pages, or they're seeing more pages. I don't know what that means, but at least we have the information to then try to go and see why we might think that might be the case. So again, if we're armed with information, we could start deciding what to do with it and how to use it best. There's a whole section on mobile specifically. So here, this is an important one that we all want to see, right? How many people on my site are on mobile, desktop, or tablet? So as you see here, we have quite a bit, 90% actually. So I had said 80 before. It's 90% of the traffic is mobile, and only a small percent is desktop and tablet. So that's always obviously good to know as you're creating your content. How are people consuming it? Obviously, mobile's king. And then which devices? Not just that it's mobile, but which one? Apple iPhone, 6S, 7 Plus. even to that level, it tells you which type or which model number they're looking at. So you get to see, you know, not a whole lot of iPhone 5s anymore, right? All right, I'm going to jump ahead to acquisition because acquisition is important. We spend a lot of time. So all that we just talked about was audience. That was all about the visitors to your site. Now we're going to talk about acquisition. Acquisition is about traffic, how they got there, right? It has to do with referrals. So there's actually 4 or 5 because they have other different ways that people can get to your site. There's organic. They searched, right? They typed in Google. They found your site. Social. So Google's done a really good job now of tracking any traffic from a social media site. So they give that information to you. And I'm going to have a disclaimer here because our social number is actually on this screen not accurate, and I'll explain to you why in a minute. Direct means they just typed your domain into the browser, right? So if your site was latinamoms.com, they typed in latinamoms.com. And referral means they came to your site from some other site, some link, some other blog that referred somebody to you. Obviously, all this information is valuable, and we're going to go into why. So if we go to all traffic and channels, now we can see specifically where this content's coming from. So there's an other. Basically, they reserve the right to say if they couldn't track where that source was coming from for whatever reason, they just throw it into other. We have a big other, and I'm gonna in one more section here, I'm gonna tell you why. But at the end of the day, for most sites that are not doing what we're doing, you're gonna see your social number and your other should be a lot smaller, right? That should be kind of like a miscellaneous. Okay, so this is why. And this is another one of those that I wanted to stress. As content producers, you want to track where your traffic's coming from. Like I said, Google's going to tell you by default that they're coming from somewhere. But let me see if I can show. The thing is, since we already have it. Yeah, I can't. I was trying to show it without the way we do it. By default, it's going to tell you where they're coming from, but what it's going to tell you is like the domain. So let's assume that you gave a link to your article to somebody that has a blog. You're going to see here the name of the blog that drove that traffic to you and how many page views that blog drove to you. The problem with that is that it's not very accurate in terms of you may know the blog or you may know the URL, but let's assume that we want to track specifically that I gave this link to this person or to put it on social media. So what we've done is we use what are called UTM codes. These are basically parameters that you add to the end of a URL to allow Google Analytics to be able to track that traffic. And I know this sounds a little complicated, so I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. Let's assume right now that you have some article that you wrote on your blog and you want to post that on Facebook. The reality is that when you put it on Facebook, all that Google's going to tell you is that it came from Facebook. It's not going to tell you which page that was published on or if somebody shared it, right? So let's assume that you give that link out to a bunch of people and they all post it on their Facebook pages. You're not going to know whose page that traffic came from. All you know is that it came from Facebook. We want to know more. We want to know specifically what page it came from. And that's where the UTM codes come from. And it sounds complicated, but it's quite simple. And here's why. I'm going to pass out afterwards. I can give it out. But if you Google, in Google, Campaign Builder or UTM Builder, Google has this free site that has a bunch of stuff on it. But the only thing we care about right now is this UTM Builder. What does this do? This allows us to take a link that we want to share with somebody from our blog and create those parameters that we need to specifically track that link or that traffic came from that blog. So let's take an example with Exit 7. We have Maria Celeste as a celebrity. She has a Facebook page. We're going to post content on her Facebook page. I want to track every time somebody clicks on that article on her Facebook page, I want to know that it came from her Facebook page and not somebody else's. So this is what we would do. We would come in here and we would put in our website URL, right? So I would say latinamoms.com, let's say. And Specifically, I would put an article here, right? For right now, for this demo, I'm just going to leave the domain. But let's assume it was some article called, 5 steps to whatever. Then I have a campaign source. So the source is who is driving that traffic. That's where we're going to put a keyword. And this is something you decide on. And you want to keep it short. You don't want it to be too long. But this is where you're going to put who the referrer is. So in this case, it's Maria Celeste. But you know what? I don't want to write Maria Celeste. It's kind of long. I'm just going to do MC, right? I know who that is. You could write whatever you would want there. The medium. The medium is where they're coming from. So in this case, it's Facebook, right? I know that I'm going to share this link on her Facebook. And then there's some optional points, additional parameters you can track here. It's up to you to decide. The campaign name can be, if you want to further qualify that. So this could be, let's say, the April sweeps or something, right? Some campaign that we're running with her, and that's why she's going to be posting this. At that point, this is an optional one. You notice the only one that's really required is the source. But that third level allows you to just have one more qualifier. And I'm going to show you right now how that works. So essentially, that's it. The URL, the source, the medium, and the campaign name if you want. What does that do? That creates automatically for me a URL that's down here. Let me, I'm going to put my HTTP there just because when you share this with somebody else, you want to make sure that it's correct. So what does this do? This creates this URL down here. And you can see that it says copy URL or convert it to a short link, which actually Google will do that because obviously you see it's a pretty long URL, right? So it'll shorten it for you and then you can give it to somebody else. And if they're going to tweet it or something, it doesn't take up as many characters. That link right there is extremely, extremely powerful. When you share that link, and obviously I'm only going to give that link to Maria Celeste to put on her Facebook page, right? I'm not giving it to anybody else because if I do, then she's going to get credit for that traffic. What that's going to do is it's going to allow me to track any traffic that I get from that URL. When that person visits that URL, actually, I'm not going to visit it yet. Let me just show you what it would look like on the back end. So now, having said what I just said, you see that under acquisition, there's this source medium. Remember we talked about campaign source, campaign medium? Here's a report by source and medium. So now, for that same week, I can see, look at this, Ana Patricia, which is another celebrity, her Facebook page drove that much traffic. And I can see sessions, users, bounce rate, all those pieces of information that we want. We can see here, all the different celebs. And then obviously, one of the sources is Google Organic, right? So that's organic traffic that came to the site. I can see Facebook. So look at number 8, it says Facebook referral. So what happens there is you created that link and you shared it. You're going to be able to drive all that traffic to your site and you're going to know that it came from that. But when somebody on her Facebook page shares that, they go, oh wow, that article is great, and they share it. Now we've lost that UTM code, right? So when they share it, unfortunately, we're not going to know that that person shared it. So when they visit our site, it's going to come back as, and this is mobile Facebook, it's going to come back as more of a generic, it came from Facebook again, right? But at the end of the day, what we wanted was the initial link, right? We wanted to know this celeb drove that much traffic. And then if we look at campaigns, so if we had used campaigns, we don't use campaigns that much, we would have seen here that campaign name. So remember I said April sweeps? It would have showed me here, okay, this is the traffic that came from that April sweeps. We tend to use the name of the celeb as the campaign name because we're not really tracking specific campaigns. So what have we done? We've essentially allowed ourselves to go from, I'm going to publish content, I'm going to share that content with people to publish it on their pages, but I want to make sure that I know who sent me that traffic. And now we can use that, right? You can give that person credit, you can share links back, and you can specifically say, hey, listen, so on and so forth, whichever celeb you pick, you drove this much, and this is why I think we can continue doing this, or maybe the other way around, you're not driving a whole lot, you're publishing on Facebook, but my page isn't getting a whole lot of traffic from you, So, maybe your content's not resonating with your audience. Again, it's valuable information that you use to then make your decisions, to decide what to do with that. Our content director is here, Zane Dean, and he'll tell you that a lot of times we'll look at that, because he writes amazing content, obviously. We'll look at that and say, did that content resonate with that audience? Because we might take the same article, right? You might write that article and send it to 3 or 4 different Facebook pages or have all your friends post it. It may not work the same. Maybe for some it'll work better than others. This will tell you, right? Which ones did it work better on? I'm running out of time, so I'm going to skip the behavior for now. Well, let me tell you just briefly on behavior. Behavior basically is about content. So this is a little important, obviously, because up until now we've been seeing everything at a high level. Under behavior, if you go to all pages, it's site content, all pages. Now we can actually see specific pages, articles, and what traffic they received. Number 5, the slash, that's the home page, right? So there was no article, so we'll see that our home page doesn't receive quite as much traffic as some of the other articles in that time frame, which makes sense because we drive traffic directly to the articles. There's a whole lot more here that we just don't have time, but you can look at specifically landing pages. It's kind of the same concept, but these are pages that people entered your site on. So specifically that they started their visit to your site on that page. And it gives you a little bit of information about those pages. And then finally, the ugly one, well, maybe not, exit pages. Which page do they keep leaving your site on, right? Like we said before, this kind of goes to bounce rate. I wouldn't worry too much about this because obviously, like we said, the nature of specifically Facebook, they went to your article, they went back to their news feed. Most likely, most of your articles are going to be the exit page too. So you take it for what it's worth. There's a whole lot more information here that we just cannot go. There's site speed, site search. So you can look at specifically what they're searching on your site. If you have a search on your site, it'll give you some of the keywords that they tend to be searching for on your site. Not on Google, but once they get to your site, if they come and they conduct any type of a search. Events is kind of an advanced topic. Events will allow us, if you have access or you know how to develop on your site or access to a developer, you can write code or put specific tags on different parts of your site where you can track that event. So for example, in our case, I'm pretty sure what we're tracking is pagination, right? So we have the next page, next page, next page. We want to know how many times people are actually paginating. So we track those clicks separately. So you'll see there on the right-hand side that there was 6,000 clicks to that pagination or next page. So things like that. Now that's more advanced. You need a developer to help you with that, but it's good to know that you can do that. Publisher, this is a whole nother topic, but if you do monetize your blog and you have AdSense, Google AdSense, you can link Google AdSense with Google Analytics. And what's cool about that, and I'm not going to click on that because it's financial information, but if you do link them, if I were to click on overview and publisher pages, you would see specifically for pieces of content how much money it generated in Google AdSense. So you can look at an article and see how much money. So now think about what I'm saying. You can now track the source of your traffic, that it came from a specific URL, from a specific Facebook page, and how much money it generated. So all of a sudden, if you put that all together, kind of like our business model, we can say, X celebrity, you drove this much traffic that generated this much money. So it kind of completes that circle for us, right? So that's really powerful. Conversions, we're not going to go into conversions. Conversions is, like I said, it creates like the funnel so you can see. We actually don't do e-commerce. It's mostly for e-commerce type stuff. We don't do e-commerce, so we don't have conversion data that I can show you. But because I ran out of time and I'm being told to shut up, the last thing I want to show you is overview. Not very exciting stuff, guys. We only have 8 people on the site. All right. It's early. This is one of those where, you just sit and you look at it all day long, right? It's really addictive. So it tells you how many people on your site, where they're coming from, what pages they're looking at, right? So specifically what articles. You can then break that down specifically, what locations, specifically the traffic sources, so you can see more data. And then what we've done, which I'd love to have more time to show you, is we've created dashboards. And If you ever want to do that, or if you have some questions, I'll give you my information, but we create real-time dashboards like this where basically we can look at that information as we're at our office and see real-time during the day who's on our site, what are they looking at, what operating system they're in, which source, so which celebrity is driving the traffic, which country is that user coming from. So in a snapshot, and this is real-time, so it's refreshing every 5 seconds. You just leave it up and like it's like the stock market, right? Sorry, I ran out of time.
We have maybe 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah, we wanted to give a little bit of time for questions. Those guys can't ask questions, but everybody else can.
Does anybody want to take?
I just, actually 2 real small quick questions.
Nice.
One is, are a lot of these features part of a paid Google Analytics?
No, everything you've seen
free?
today is free.
And the second one is, how would you pull out like simple reports? So if you're doing this for a client,
Yeah.
without doing like a screenshot or something.
Luckily, Google makes things easy. So pretty much every one of these screens that you've seen here, at the very top here, you can email it or export it. And your export options are pretty good. You can export to Excel, to PDF, right to Google Sheets, spreadsheets. So it's really powerful. Actually, from that point on, one thing that we do is when you click on email, you can even schedule so that data can be sent out every day, every week, every month, and Google will handle it for you. It'll send that as an attachment. So we do that with some of our reports and have them just go out every day, so we don't have to run the report every day. It's pretty powerful, all free. Come on, I know there's another question. I ran out of time anyway, so.
We got one.
Go ahead, Paul, go ahead.
So you were suggesting how we're consuming content today is quick and out the door. And I saw that our landing page entrance was the same as top article is the same as exit.
Right.
It proves that theory. So to that question, bounce rate, time spent should be minimized over time to what's somewhat obsolete in your eyes. And second is for a 50-year-old man to stay young, what is it that you do to make that happen?
Obviously, he knows me, right? I'm not 50. Close, but not quite. No, listen, I was saying it before, and you guys came in late, so you didn't hear it. But bounce rate is not as important as it used to be. Absolutely. The nature of social media is people go in, they go out. We would love nothing better, and Zane's content's amazing, but we would love nothing better to believe that they're going to sit there and look at 3 or 4 articles. But the reality is that how do you guys consume Facebook? I mean, for the most part, you're in your feed, you look at an article, you click on it, you read it. When you're done reading it, how many times do you really click on another article on that site? You don't. You go back to your feed because you want to keep reading more things. So that's going to kill your bounce rate. It is what it is. It's the nature of the society that we're in. So bounce rate's going to be high. Don't worry about it. Okay? Thanks, guys. I'm way over time. If you have any questions, just let me know or come ask me and I'll give you my email.